South East Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
South East Radio.
Well, PWC has prepared its pre-budget submission, and Ronan Furlong, a tax partner here in PWC in Wexford, joins us now to delve into their asks, expectations and hopes for October's budget. Ronan, as we are midway through the summer of 2021, how would you assess the business sentiment out there at present?
Well, I think in my experience, it's very sectoral dependent. So certain sectors, and if you look at the growth projections for the Irish economy, they're very buoyant. But I think once you look under the bonnet, you quickly realise that it's, as I said, sectoral dependent. So some sectors are actually doing very well and have been thriving, and in fact did very well last year as well, even notwithstanding the COVID pandemic crisis. However, clearly other sectors have been absolutely hammered, are still in crisis mode. Hospitality, retail, personal services, gyms, hairdressers, etc. And they're only now getting back on their feet in a small way.
OK, now you've name-checked the sectors that have been worst hit by the pandemic. So from your insights into the market through PWC, Ronan, what sectors have been most resilient?
Well, I think manufacturing has come through extremely strongly. I think life sciences has come through very strongly. I think pharmaceuticals in particular have come through very strongly. I think professional services, which is obviously the game that I'm in, but that has done quite well during this difficult period. And I think one of the reasons why in professional services and finance also similarly has come through quite well. I think some of the reasons are that remote working has gone very well. I mean, an awful lot of businesses were very concerned at the start of the pandemic when they had to, we moved into lockdown periods. What would it mean? Would people still be productive? Could they connect with their clients? But as it's happened, the move to, working digitally and remotely has actually gone very successfully. And I think that's great for where you and I are based, Carol, which is in the southeast of Ireland. So I think that's great for Wexford because it has credentialised the offering of the southeast, where suddenly, why can't large employers look at having, some of their operations outside the major cities, cost of living much lower here, etc. And now, with the whole remote working, concept being proven in operation, I think they'll be far more open to that. And I think we hopefully have a great opportunity to capitalise on that. And again, one of the things in our pre-budget submission is for the incentivisation of regional hubs. Again, as a way so that there will be accelerated, tax relief on regional hubs to encourage, these employers to, send more jobs down into the regions.
And as your clients look to the future, what are their main concerns?
Well, again, sectorally dependent. I think a key thing for the sectors that are under pressure, so we'll talk about it, as I said, personal services, hospitality, retail, they're looking at a fairly uncertain 12 months ahead. Many of them are still very reliant on the ESFS. They're concerned that it may be tapered too soon, and we would share those concerns. And one of the key, pillar of our pre-budget submission is that the ESFS would be extended to June 22 because, the focus needs to be protecting and restoring jobs. Because as you know, once a job is lost, it can be very expensive through training, etc., to try and replace that using government funds. In fact, a huge amount of funds can go into that, whereas it could be a much cheaper way of protecting the exchequer. And also, let's not forget, a huge amount of the revenues that the exchequer collects is through the PAYE system. So it's crucial that we, protect jobs. Other areas of concern, again, within there is, the 9% VAT rate. In fairness, the government have announced that will be extended into 2022 already. But we will be saying that to enable those businesses planned, that it would go beyond that to December 23. Because, again, we need to get our hospitality sector back on its feet. I think a lot of the concerns is about how reliant some companies that are under pressure are on the likes of EWSS and also, as I said, the 9% rate. Tax debt warehousing, an awful lot of companies have availed of that. And again, they're nervous that it could be prematurely withdrawn at the end of the year and will put them under huge pressure because it's been a really valuable relief. And, I think it's important, just to acknowledge that I feel personally, is my view personally, that the supports that the government actually did introduce, they deserve great credit for them. They have worked very well. The proof is in the eating in terms of if you see how many companies have managed to survive this crisis period. But that could change very rapidly, as you know, Carl, if those supports were prematurely withdrawn.
And just in relation to the EWSS, Ronan, from your analysis, how long does the EWSS scheme need to continue, and does it need any refinement?
I think it's working very well, but it does need to be continued, in our opinion. And again, we've discussed this with government. We are suggesting that it would be extended to June 22. Now, to be fair, that's easy to say. I mentioned a huge amount of debt has been taken on, and the government is under a lot of pressure to start to manage its borrowings because, as I say, there's up to nearly 40 billion, depending on which figures you look at, over a 2-year period, which is a huge amount of money for a population of 5 million. Notwithstanding that, we think that it's crucial that these businesses be given time to recover, and that those jobs are fully restored and become bedded in and secure before that is withdrawn. So that's why we're saying a longer period, up to June 22. I would imagine they would look at doing some tapering if they were to extend this, maybe perhaps from January onwards, and I think that's probably understandable.
I was reading the results of a recent County Wexford Chamber survey, Ronan, and the question was asked about the EWSS and the importance of that scheme to businesses. But some of the feedback that came back from local businesses about the scheme was they felt it was a blunt instrument when it came to the fact that businesses had to have a drop in turnover of 25% in order to avail of the scheme. But some businesses might have had a drop in turnover by 15 or 20 or 22 or 3% and didn't get the benefit of the scheme at all. Do you think that there's some room for refinement in that respect?
Yes, I do. And I think more flexibility should be provided as well, certainly for companies on the margins. That's part of our submission. I'm not here to defend the government, but all I would say is, look, it was developed in a very short space of time, probably in a bit of a rush, and I agree that has caused some pretty arbitrary outcomes where some people have fallen in, some people have fallen out. We would suggest that would be higher than the 25%, and there could be some flexibility or tapering around the margins of it as well. Whether that will be done or not, it remains to be seen, but it's one of the things that we've mentioned.
The tax warehousing facility that was provided by Revenue and continues to be provided has been availed by over 70,000 businesses, many of which are concerned about when this does eventually come to an end and they'll have to start making repayments on that debt. That could be anything up to, in some cases, €100,000. What are your thoughts on that, and what advice have you got for businesses in terms of how to engage with the Revenue when that time comes?
Well, what I would say about that is, first of all, we feel it's very important that would be extended. It's currently planning to expire at the end of this year. We think it should be extended to December 22. Once it becomes clear, whatever the date is, that companies then need to start, businesses need to start planning around that in terms of their repayments, because it does have to be repaid at some point realistically. I mean, in fairness to the government, as I said, there's a huge amount of debt there. The funds are required to pay that off. So, but I think so long as businesses know they can plan around it, and my personal view is they just will need more time.
Another initiative that was included in PWC's pre-budget submission was in relation to the small benefits exemption and how it could be utilised to support the hospitality industry.
I think there's some creative ways of using this. So as you know, at the moment, there's up to €500 can be provided in the small business exemption by way of a voucher. But we would suggest that would be extended. But it could be extended in up to 1,500, but it could be extended in a targeted way, so that, for example, the uplift, say the €1,000 extension, it would only qualify if it was vouchers within, certain sectors such as Irish hospitality sector or Irish food and drink sector, etc. So again, I think with a bit of a creativity, it wouldn't cost the Exchequer all that much. Like if you look at what they tried to bring in, like many of the supports they brought in last year were very good. I think one exception to that, which didn't really work, as you know, were the supports for the Irish hospitality sector, this credit system, where people were able to get a credit and claim it back through their tax return. I mean, I think there was very little take up with that. It was kind of clunky, to be honest with you. But I think there are easier ways of achieving the same thing.
And of course, our corporate tax rate is under siege. Minister Pascal Donoghue is definitely defending this fervently internationally. But where do you think this ball is going to land?
Well, I do think an awful lot will really depend on what happens in the United States. There's over 1,600 foreign direct investment companies through the IDA have come into Ireland. And over half of those are from the United States, and most of the biggest, largest ones, and everyone knows they're all household names, have established base here. So it is really important. I mean, it supports directly up to 260,000 jobs that get paid on average nearly €60,000 per employee. So that's a very significant contribution to our exchequer. And there's probably another 250,000 indirect jobs supported by those. So it's crucially important, and it's also a huge part of our corporate tax receipts. So this is, there's a lot at stake on this. However, I think the reason why the minister is playing hardball, I think I would give him credit for this. He is getting a lot of flack for it, but I can see why he's doing it, because he's looking over at the US Congress and he's looking at the US Senate. The Senate is literally split down the middle, and there is a question as to whether, the legislation would pass in the United States. There's some very fervent opposition to it. All it takes is one key Democrat, a Joe Manchin type figure, who you've probably heard of him. And that's all it takes, and they can't get it through. So it's very finely poised, and I think what Pascal Donoghue is really saying is, Ireland is not saying it won't participate, but they want to see that this is real in the United States. Because if the US is going to move on this, well, then Ireland it would be foolish not to move on it. My personal assessment is that some change is inevitable, and the type of thing that's being discussed, the 15% minimum corporate tax rate, is something that we can live with.
And Ronan, while a 15% corporate tax rate is palatable, probably more concerning is the other dimension to this conversation, and that's where exactly corporate profits are going to be taxed and its overall impact in time on Ireland.
Yes, that's an excellent point. At present, taxes are levied where a company is managed and controlled, i.e. in Ireland. The proposal is that more of its profits will be taxed where it makes its sales or deliver its services. And it's very unclear whether that would make it through the US political system at the moment, again, which is one of the reasons why I think the minister is holding firm on this. But secondly, if you look at the OECD proposals, they are pitched at a pretty high level. And if they stay at that high level, and what I mean by that is it would only affect companies with a turnover of 750 billion. So, that's a pretty big company by anybody's standards, I think it's fair to say. So you're talking about maybe a relatively small amount of companies internationally would actually fall within this.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Ronan Furlong, tax partner with PWC here in Wexford. And I'd like to thank Ronan for his assessment of the important areas that may impact or continue to impact Irish business owners going forward.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.